Been a while.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you're welcome back in. This is your one and only Wakawaka Doctor, and today we're talking about how to migrate to the United States. Usually, I would talk about alternatives to the US, to Canada, to the UK, and that's why my YouTube channel is flooded with a lot of countries that you can go to as alternatives: Japan, China, Poland, Belgium, Netherlands, Republic of Ireland, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Germany. I have 15 of them on my YouTube channel that you can go across. But I've been getting several DMs, direct messages asking me, Waka Waka Doctor, what about the United States? Talk about the United States. We want to know how to go to the United States, okay? So I thought, let me get across to someone who lives in the US with the experience of migrating and has moved before and can help people that want to move. And that's why I've brought you here, Cyril. I know that you're a very busy man and it's just 7 a.m. Right now. Now, where exactly are you in the US?
Also, I'm in Alabama,
Yeah, so
Birmingham.
it's 7 a.m. in Alabama. Thank you for taking our time to talk to us. So there are a lot of people who want to listen to you. Can you tell us, just tell us a brief, just tell us something brief about the United States? You know, a lot of people have just been hearing United States, world power, Donald Trump. So what exactly is the United States? Where is it? And what's so fascinating about the US?
Well, that's a lot. So if you ask me about the US, basically for me, I would say that it's one of the countries with the most diverse group of individuals, and so you would find virtually every race here. You would find people from every continent here. And personally, I also love the US because of their educational system. If you talk about education, I'll say it's one of the best places to have your education at all levels. If you want to talk about job or work, seeking different jobs or work opportunities, for a while the US has been number one, not just because of how attractive the jobs are, but because of how good their payment is in terms of salaries. Um, I like everything about their entertainment, nightlife. I mean, the US is a place where there's no, even though there are laws, the human freedom is compared to none. You are free to do whatever you want to do. And so, personally, if you combine all these factors, if you want to talk about tourism, it's one of the great destinations. I mean, almost every state has something to show. There are about 50 states in the US, and like you asked, I'm in Alabama and we are in a different time zone. Those in the East Coast are in a different time zone. Those on the West are in a different time zone.
It's
So,
so big.
yeah. So one country, um, the time difference might be maybe 5 hours between that state and Nigeria. But my state is about, I think, 7 hours. Another state, if you're in California, might be maybe 9 hours difference. So yeah, that's
What's the nightlife like in the US? What's the weather usually like? What's the currency like?
all right. So with the weather, the US has basically about 4 seasons. So we are currently entering spring, and so during spring there you see so much rain, and also because spring is right after winter. During winter, all the leaves are dead and gone.
Mhm.
The grass dries up, but then during spring you realize that they are all coming back. They are turning green, and then from there go to summer, and that is what the part of the season virtually almost everyone likes because it's hot. You can go out in your shorts and your
Yeah, yeah.
t-shirts, and then from there go to fall. And so for fall, as the name pre-suggests, you have all the leaves they are falling from the trees and all that. Then from there go to winter, which is the coldest, and so that's where people talk about snow because it starts snowing around that time. And
Yeah.
winter is very close to November, December around that time. So basically, these are the seasons. If you talk about the currency, the US, the main currency is the US dollar, and I'm not sure of the exchange rate between. I mean, if I'm to compare one US dollar to a Nigerian naira, I'm not even sure. I hear of Niger.
I think it's almost 500 now.
Oh, okay,
I think it's almost 500. But what about you? You are from Ghana, no?
yeah.
What's the currency exchange like?
It's 1:6. One US dollar is about six Ghana cedis. Yeah,
Six.
Yeah, about 6 Ghana cedis.
Jesus Christ. So even Ghana cities is just using Nigerian naira to play. Okay, so and African food, very easy to get, isn't it?
Yes, very, very easy because I mean, most of the states, especially the East Coast and those on the West and some of the southern states have like huge African population. When I talk about African population, you will find certain areas being more populated by people from Africa. And so when you go to such places, you would find African food. Actually, even though I'm in Alabama, Alabama is more of a white state, not many Africans, but even here,
Yeah.
I get to buy African food from Chinese supermarkets and Mexican Caribbean supermarkets. So the one I'm talking about recently, I saw Nigeria Gary. It's called Igbuju or something. There was this Gary
Okay.
called Igbuju or something
Have
like
you ever
Igbuju.
seen Prison Break?
Prison Break, yeah.
So whenever I hear of Alabama, I think of T-Bag because
Ah,
that's where it comes from. Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Now let's get to the crux of the matter. How did you move? How did you make the transition? How you were in Ghana before? How did you move to the United States? What did you have to do? Tell us your own story.
Okay. So after I graduated from the university, I did a doctor of optometry and I graduated in 2015. So it's a straight 6 year program in Ghana. So after that, I worked for a year and then that was when I left Ghana. So I left Ghana around July 2016. And when I was leaving, I left through a visa and route known as the J1 visa. And so basically the J1 is for people who are interested in research, people who are scholars. So if you want to be in academia or you're in academia, you can use that route. Or if you are in any other field, but you want to be an exchange visitor, like those who come for these type of exchange trips, then you would go on a J1 visa. And so basically, I found this opportunity. It was more of a job opportunity, a postdoc position at the Harvard Medical School. So I applied for it and I was given that. And so when you get that particular type of opportunity where you are coming to the US to work as a researcher, then the institution will send a document to you known as the DS 2019 for the J1 visa. And so when they give you that document, it summarizes everything that they are going to take care of you when you come, they'll be paying you, etc. And so all you need to do is to take that to the embassy, you pay for your visa fee, and then you go to the embassy with that document. And so when the consular sees it, then they know that, okay, this is it actually defines whatever you are going to do. That document tells everything. And so even with that particular interview, I wasn't asked a single question because everything was
Everything.
spelled
Yeah.
out on the document. And so then I got my J1 visa. And typically the J1 lasts for 5 years. But then when I came after 2 years, my interest changed. I wanted to pursue a PhD. And so I had to switch my visa status to an F1 visa. And so the F1 is the visa that is given to students. And so around that same time, I could have just stayed here, gone to Canada or any of the countries around Mexico to change my status. But I wanted to visit my family in Ghana. So in 2018, I came to Ghana, visited my family, and then I switched to the F1 visa. And also, the F1 visa, they would give you a form known as an I-20. It's similar to the DS 2019. It also tells everything you're coming to do. It tells whether you're going to be fully funded. They know if you're going to be given a stipend. It spells out everything. And so when you go to the embassy and you just give it to them, when it's time for you to be interviewed, they look at it and they really understand what you're
Okay,
going to be
let
doing.
me cut you short now because I'm getting a bit, sucked into this. What are the different types of US visas you have? Can you tell us the different kinds and what they mean?
All right. So if I'm to go into that, we'll talk about more than 15 types of visas.
So tell
And
us the
so,
important ones, the
yeah.
most popular
So,
ones.
so specifically to your audience, so I'll tell them about the H1B. I'll start with the H1B, which is the working visa. And so if you get any job in the US that is willing to take you on, then that's the visa they are going to give to you. But coming from Africa and then knowing what knowing your audience, I'll tell them that they should always consider those opportunities also. So usually people are scared to apply for jobs from Africa to the US. But then, if once you've graduated from any of these courses in the university, at least if you've graduated from the university, then depending on how well you carry yourself on your CV, your experiences, you stand a chance of getting a job here in the US. Like I said, in my case, I got something like a job from Ghana, but then it was in research, and that is why I came on a J1 visa. So the first, like I'm saying, is H1B, which is a job visa. So if you get a job here, then that's the visa your employer would give to you. I mean, the documents your employer would give to you for you to get that visa to come to the US. And then they have the B1, and then the B visas are more for tourism and like business kind of things, leisure. And some get 5 years for that visa, some get 3 months. It depends. And then we have the F1 visa, which is for students. So if you are coming to school, you would get an F1 visa. And if you are coming to do anything like an exchange student, if you are coming to work in a research facility, then you're going to get a J visa. But then it's important to also state that if you are given an F1 or J1 visa and you have a spouse, be it male or female, regardless, then the spouse would be given an F2 visa or a J2 visa, depending on which one you are on. And so, if let's say you have a wife and you have kids, and you are coming to school on an F1 visa, then if you are to declare that you have a wife and kids, then they would also be issued an F2 visa so they can come with you. And that's the same thing with the J2 visa, they'll come with you. Yeah, actually, the H1B visa, which is the work visa, your wife and spouse, your spouse and kids will also be given the H2B, so they would also come with you. So the US visas have this kind of thing that they take care of your family also indirectly so that you move with
So
your.
you're saying that US is one of those countries that can also cater for your family, and okay, if you're married or you have kids and you want to move everybody, that's one of the ways. Okay, someone is asking here that how do we apply for jobs in the US? Is there any website?
Yes, they should, usually when you go onto these websites, you are tempted to think these things are not real. But then the number one way of finding jobs is indeed.com. Go to indeed.com, search for whatever job it is. You do want to be in like a drug manufacturing job? Do you want to be in a pharmaceutical company? Just look for them. Look, you know your expertise, you know the type of jobs you want to do. Look for those jobs. You would see them there. Submit your CV if it's asking for a CV. If it's asking you to apply to a website, just apply. I mean, you should trust your credentials and then just apply for these jobs. And if you meet their standards in terms of the application pool they are getting, you'll be shortlisted for an interview. And from there, you get your offer if you deserve it. And that was what happened to me in my case when I first came in 2016.
So Indeed.com is the most popular one. Is there
The
any other
number one.
website?
So other websites are more like you can use LinkedIn. There are so many recruiters on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn is also a place, unfortunately, for some time now, it's tending to be something like a social media or a Facebook equivalent. But then LinkedIn is a place where, depending on the things you put out there, you get recruiters contacting you day in, day out. You get them in your mails all the time, depending on the type of things you put out there. Are you talking about your credentials? Are you putting out your expertise? Depending on the things you're about, unfortunately, it's becoming something like Facebook where people post pictures. And so LinkedIn is also one way. And then you can also join professional society pay groups. So for example, let's say if you're a chemistry major or a chemistry graduate, you can join the maybe American Chemistry Association, whatever it may be. Usually joining some of these organizations or societies, they have an email list. It's usually free to just be part of that emailing list. You just put your email address to be emailed. And so when the opportunities, these type of associations also put them there, these groups. And so that's the type that I would recommend mainly for people who want to come here and work in different facilities like research facilities and these type of
Okay,
skilled
let's
jobs.
let's digress a little bit before we go on. Someone is asking, what about if someone just wants to come and visit a relative? How can they do it? Do you have any
Yeah.
idea?
Yes, and so that's the one that they usually come with the B visa if you want to visit your relative.
A
But then
B2, do you say?
B, the
B
B,
visa. Okay.
yeah, B1. But then it's those type of visas. Well, if it's just visit and you just want to visit, then you can come on that visa. But Usually, for me, if you are thinking about moving to be in the US, I would always advise that you go through the educational route or the job
Education,
seeking
right?
route or
Yes.
the job seeking route. But if you just want to visit and come back, then you would have to go for the B. And
I always tell people that the best thing, the best way, the easiest way to move is through the educational route. How long can you stay in the US before you become a personal resident?
so there's so many exceptions to this rule, but in general, 5 years.
In general, 5 years.
5 years.
Can it be faster?
But yes, it can be, and they have so many other ways of doing that. Some can seek for asylum, depending on what is happening back home. Actually, there's this guy I know who contacted me recently on LinkedIn. He just got to the US in January, and he has already filed for asylum because he said there's something going on in Ethiopia. Um, also, if let's say I'm here, right, and then I want to come, if I'm a citizen or a resident, and then I want to marry someone in um, Ghana, and I'm to bring that person here, then when that person is coming here, the person will be coming here with a special type of visa that would convert that person to a permanent resident, you know. And so it's tricky.
Mm.
Someone might come straight away and would have the permanent residency, but if you are here through the normal route, you are going about your education and other things, then it's you'd need other things to be able to file it on your own. So there's an approach where people go through lawyers. There's an approach where people marry, and I believe you might have heard of people doing this marriage of is it convenience. They look for a citizen, they get married to them, and they can get it instantly, you know. So it really varies. Um, Also, if you're in academia, that is schooling, then they have this type which is for it's in quote called special aliens or whatever. So it's like people with talent, and so you
Mm.
just have to demonstrate your credentials, maybe from your publications, and with that, you just have your professors write recommendation letters for you. That is the type that you would want to use if you are in academia.
Okay. Someone else is asking, how easy was it for you to find accommodation when you were still in Ghana?
Oh, it's very, very easy. So, depending on the state you are going to, there's this popular website known as Craigslist. Craigslist,
AIG, yeah, Craigslist.
Craigslist. So you can put Craigslist maybe if you are going to New York, whichever city it is, and you can find these type of things there. But usually I'll not advise people to use that route. You can just book an Airbnb, usually for maybe 1 week, right? You can book an Airbnb. You can book Airbnbs from wherever you may be in the US. So let's say I'm coming to Bronx, New York. I look for any Airbnb around where I want to settle.
Okay.
Airbnbs are like people having their own homes and then they are kind of renting, not really rent. It's like I have a spare room, and if you are just passing by a visitor, you can stay there for a short while and it's relatively very cheap. So you would go for an Airbnb, you stay there, and then you use Craigslist to search. The reason why I'm saying that is you would want to actually see the facility you are going to stay in as opposed to
Mm.
seeing pictures on the internet.
Yeah.
Even though you could just, I mean, sign up from home, you would want to see it and be sure that this is where I want to be. And so usually you would want to stay in an Airbnb. You just book it 3 days, 4 days, and once you are here, you just search through Craigslist and
Okay. We will continue to answer questions, but now let's come back to where we were. Um, Now, for a lot of countries that I've spoken to people in that live in Europe, I usually ask them how can they migrate, and usually they would say that education or job opportunities, or like you said, marriage or asylum. Um, am I right to say that that's the same thing in the US? Those are the only ways you can migrate.
those are the sure ways, but not the only ways, because the
Okay,
US has this visa lottery program that runs once a year.
okay,
Um, I think every October. It's a lottery, just like any lottery. But I don't know if Nigeria is part of that lottery. The cap is based on the number of people you have from your country that are currently in the US. That determines the cap. And
okay,
so I don't know, depending on the number of Nigerians in the US, probably Nigeria might not be part or
okay.
would be part. So
So we can establish that at least job opportunities, education, and you've told us jobs that the best way to do it is through LinkedIn or Indeed.com. Let's
indeed,
talk
yeah.
a little bit about education, which is the way I know you got to the US. So For people listening, how can they move to the US via the educational route?
All right. This is a very great question, and let me start this way. So, first of all, if you're in Nigeria and you want to study in the US, depending on what level, whether at the master's level or at the PhD level, then the dynamics is going to be very different. Now, mind you, for most programs in the physical sciences, for example, you do not need a master's to go into a PhD in the US. That is why the US PhD is typically 5 years, because your first 2 years will be coursework. And so then usually your first 2 years is coursework, and then the next 3 years is like your research, the research phase of your program, even though you start research right from year one. And so I'm just trying to drum home this, that you do not need a master's to pursue a PhD if that's what you want to do in the US. Now, let's start with the master's level. Unlike other countries in Europe, right, where you'd see a particular scholarship like maybe Commonwealth scholarship, Erasmus Mundus scholarships, and
Yeah.
all those other types of scholarships, the US at the master's level, usually you will not find any scholarship coming in any fancy name. So what happens is most scholarships are usually, because these type of scholarships like Commonwealth, etc., the federal government or the government itself has a role to play, right, in terms of funding. But then in the US, most of these things are handled at the school level. And so when you are applying to the school, you wouldn't see anything like this particular type of scholarship. But then what you should do usually at the master's level is you write to the program managers and ask them, and everyone should take opportunity of that. Never be scared. You look for whichever program you want to get into, the program manager, the graduate school, whatever it is, and ask them, do they fund master's programs or master's students for that particular program you want to do? And how this works is this. Sometimes when you're admitted into that program, they'll let you know. That's when you ask them that we give funding to people who would select as research assistants. And so you work as an RA, technically a research assistant. And so your fees would be taken care of. You'd be given a stipend, your health insurance would be paid for, and that would be enough to sustain you in the US. Or you might work as a graduate teaching assistant. So it's still at the school level, as you'd notice. So you're not going to see anything published like this scholarship applied to it usually. And so the school might have a graduate teaching assistant position. Sometimes you might even work, let's say, in the library for a while. So they have these different, you might be an administrative kind of assistant. So they have these different assistantships. That's how they usually put them, assistantships, that they will fund you for at the master's level. And so usually when you are trying to apply for a school, write to the program managers and ask them that, do they give funding to the applicants for this program? And when they say yes, you can go ahead and submit your application, and then you request to be considered for those assistantships. For the PhD, most PhDs are fully funded. I mean, once you get into the program, you're taken care of already. And it's also in two folds. There's this approach where sometimes the school requires you to write to a professor before you get admissions, right? And so with that type of approach, it means the professor is the one going to find you right from the start. And so the professor needs to agree to work with you. With that approach, what I find people, personally, I've been trying to mentor people to come to school in the US. And one thing I find people doing wrong is the emails they send to their professors. Usually they don't get they don't get replies, because there's a way you should draft it. I've actually read some that people have written something like a 2-page document. It's usually supposed to be just about, I don't know, maybe 2 paragraphs, because they are very busy. They get these emails from all over the world.
Yeah.
And so how do they read it? And you should also have your CV in very good shape. I've seen so many CVs, and to be very frank, I'm not being biased, or I'm not trying to downplay Africa, but then I lived in Ghana before coming here. So I know that for the standards of Africa, those CVs will stand. Like these CVs that I usually see people putting their pictures there. Sometimes, you see people writing language and maybe they're writing Yoruba,
House address.
Hausa, and house address. Those type of things, they do not stand. So I would advise that when they are trying to write to professors and they want to attach their CVs, they should look for, let's say, US educational CV templates and use that as a model to write theirs, and not to rely on the type that they already know that they've been using to maybe apply for jobs. It's very different if you want to go into academia. And so that's that approach. And so usually when you write to the professors, they'll let you know. Now, there's an exam called GRE, and there's another one known as TOEFL. Since your audience are mainly, I think, people who speak English, there's another thing you can always do. You can always write to the schools and explain to them that, hi, this. I had my education in Nigeria, and the mode of communication for all official and business purposes are in English. And I graduated and had my education also in English. And so for that reason, I want to know if this exam TOEFL could be waived for me. And
Are
so
you
usually
serious?
what,
So you're
yeah,
saying that not all universities, I mean, you can actually go and study your master's and PhD without,
yes, even
wow.
without Jerry. And so with that TOEFL thing, then you would have to bring something called an English proficiency letter. And so for my school in Ghana, it's the English department that gives it to you. It's just a letter stating that you had your education in English, blah blah blah,
English.
and then you submit it to them. So that's the English. That's a way of going around the TOEFL if you want it waived. And then not all schools accept the GRE. Actually, even because of COVID, the last application cycle, most schools did not accept GRE. And one thing I would also tell those listening is that when they are applying for schools, they should also consider these schools that they refer to as HBCUs. I think it's historically black, I think community and universities also, like colleges, sorry, and universities, HBCUs. They should
Okay.
consider the HBCUs, and then under the HBCUs, they should go look at those schools. Usually, these schools have funding. They usually have funding. And another thing also, when you are trying to apply to a school in the US, always look for the states, like those schools that carry the state names. Like, so let's say maybe University of maybe Texas, or maybe a city in that state, maybe University of Houston. The reason I'm saying this is usually these federally funded schools, these they usually have funding, but as opposed to the private schools, usually these
Okay.
private schools will not have enough funding to fund you. But if you are going to these for maybe University of Indiana, University of New York, those type of schools, then the likelihood of getting funding is very high. And like I'm saying also, there are so many schools that do not take the GRE for even PhDs. And so the
Wow.
best place to start from is always look at your senior colleagues. That is the first advice I always give to people. Whichever program you were in, look at those who came before you and find out where they are. Once you know the schools they got into, you can look at those schools. You go to their website, you go to that whatever program it is, you look at the requirements. And once that school has been receptive to at least an African, you should be sure that that school is very receptive
Yeah.
to international students. And so usually that's where to start from. But you find people trying to apply to all these schools, and usually they would say they didn't get admissions because you probably applied to a school that did not have funding,
Mm.
or you probably applied to a program that didn't have these assistances, or you didn't write to them to waive off your TOEFL. To be very frank, I've even had at least two people I've mentored who have asked for the application fees to be waived for them, and it was waived.
Wow.
Yes. So there's so many opportunities. So when you go to any website, you see the program manager, you see their email address, write to them. Feel free, never be scared. Write to them and let them know what your concerns are. That is why they are there. And so usually we just take this position of just reading and then we get overwhelmed and we give up. No, go ahead with it. And then the second way of applying to the PhD is the type that you don't need to write to anyone. Just apply to the program. You are with a pool of applicants. You are shortlisted for an interview, maybe via Zoom or Skype. You have your interview, and once you're accepted, the school or the program itself is funding you. So this time it's not a professor funding you, but the school is just funding you. So these are the different ways you usually get funded for
Okay. What's
graduate
what's
studies.
the average tuition for masters in the US?
Hmm. Uh, I didn't do a master's program here before my PhD, but since it's in grad school, usually these things are per credit, and I wouldn't be surprised if you'd be going close to like maybe six, seven, $8,000 a
Six,
year.
7,008. Wow.
Yeah,
Six.
probably a semester. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you are going close to six, 7,000. I wouldn't be surprised. I,
And the same way you can also apply for scholarships just the same way you've explained just now.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Now, can people work while they study? Because I know in Europe you can work, you can find a job and study. So how many hours can people do?
yeah. So in the US, you can work for 20 hours if you are working as a student. And so there are restrictions to the type of jobs you can do. But once you're in the school, you'll find those jobs you are eligible to, what's the name, apply to. And so you can work 20 hours a week. I mean, I wouldn't want to say anything. That's the legal way. People do their own things,
Yeah, yeah.
but then the legal way is 20 hours a
20
week.
hours.
Yeah.
Okay, someone is saying that he's checked online and it seems someone is giving you a very good saying that you're a very good guy. You sound and you sound like a lecturer. I'm sure
Thank you.
that's good. Someone said that when they go online, they always see school fees as 20K, 30K, and it's almost as if it's choking them. What do you have to say about that?
So, like I'm saying, when they go to any school's website, when you go to any school's website, always find out, don't waste your application. Ask them, do you have graduate assistantships or teaching assistantships or any type of assistantship? In fact,
Or
you
even
can
funding, you
even,
can ask.
yes, you can even tell them that when you get admissions, is it possible for them to circulate your email to the school and the faculty members in the department to know if anyone needs an RA or a TA? These are all things you can do. And so, like I'm saying, once you are funded, all your fees will be taken care of. And so you definitely will not want to go to a school where you are paying fees. At worst, you'll be given a partial scholarship, but then this is the fun part of the partial scholarship in the US. The partial scholarship means that your fees would be paid up to, let's say, maybe about 80%, and you'd be given a stipend. And so at the end of the day, even with the balance, you didn't be paying from your own money, you still be paying from the stipend they have given to you. So I know certain people who have paid from their stipends, because the stipend is enough to sustain you. And so maybe they will have about $3,000 to add to it. And so cumulatively, as they get their stipend, then they take it out to pay that outstanding balance. So always ask the schools, do you have these positions? And another thing I forgot to say, in the US, you can think about your grades, all right, but then the US is a place that really your grades hold equal weight, just as your CV and your statement of purpose. These are two essential documents you would need to attach to your application. And so this is another reason, another place I see people falling short. The statement of purpose is something telling them, the admissions committee, about your drive. What is motivating you? Why do you want to go into this program? How can the school be of help to you? From here, where are you going to? You know, um, it's a way of letting them know what is actually driving you to go into this program, and then that thing that is motivating you, such that even when you are stranded, you know that because of this thing I'm looking at, I'll still push through. That's why it's called. Some people call it your motivational letter, your statement of purpose, and all that. And so it's a document that I would always advise people to really take time to prepare. So you look at the statement of purpose and then the CV of a lot of applicants. And to be very frank, if I were to be on an admission committee, I wouldn't select such candidates. And so
Yeah.
when you get these two documents, people always worry about their grades. There's this guy, he's called Iguchuku on LinkedIn. I mentored him recently and he got into the University of Kentucky. His first time contacting me, he complained that he graduated with a second class upper in Nigeria. And so he didn't know, but he's now going into a PhD program this fall. And so please put a lot of effort in getting your documents right. And then once you write to these program managers, you know your options. And so don't look at the fees. And I mean, I wouldn't advise anyone to come here and be paying fees because it's very expensive. If you can work as a TA or a research assistant, that is why they are paying. It's like you working, that's your salary. And so
Mm.
that's why they are taking care of your fees and your stipend. And for a PhD, you would most likely be funded. Almost all
Okay.
the programs will fund you.
Okay, I have a question here that for a nurse who's running a BSc program in nursing and wants to migrate to the US, do you have any advice?
So I would still advise that first of all, come through education see if you want to do your masters. Um, I've seen people come here and while studying for their masters, they take the licensure exams for nurses in the US, and then from there, once they are done, they can apply for jobs as nurses. So instead of them trying to apply for any other job, they apply directly as nurses and they get into it. I know someone who did it in New York. So certain states, and also, mind you, the, most of these health professions, actually, almost all these professions that are regulated, they are usually defined at the state level. So
Okay.
each state would have the requirements for one to be qualified or eligible to sit for an exam. So I know for New York, for example, if you are having a nursing degree from Africa, if you are having a doctor of optometry and like all these different things, there's a way by which you can sit for their board exams and then be licensed to practice. So first of all, try to come for higher education, maybe masters, get a teaching assistantship, a research assistantship, and then from there, you just try to use part of maybe your stipend to register for these exams. You get the material,
Okay.
study for it, and write your board exams.
I know that you mentioned one or two ways, I mean, by which you can get funding, but do you have a list, even if it's two or three, list of scholarships that run in the US? Do you have
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That, for example, they do not usually have these scholarships coming up with these names. They are
names
at the school level,
at the school
but
level?
then I'll always advise them that they should consider the HBCUs. Look for these
Okay.
universities.
And
So,
HBCU is the history of blacks
historically black colleges and universities.
universities. Okay. Now, another question I often get in my DMs is for people who are HND holders. HND holders are usually in polytechnics,
Okay.
and some people graduate from universities with a 2-2, second class lower. Does that work? Can they come to the US?
They definitely can. And so for a second class lower, most likely that if I'm to be a bit objective, right? If I want to be hard here, I'd say that most likely you might want to take the GRE as a way of serving as a buffer, you know,
Mm.
for your
To
second class
boost
lower.
to boost your okay.
Yeah. And the GRE is something you can study for. It's just math, basic algebra and some stuff in English. Many people look at the English part and then they give up. But then my point is if you can score maybe 150 in the English, right? And
Mm.
then and trust me, if you can score let's say 150 yeah, let's say 150 in the math part and then let's say the English part maybe another 150, that's already 300. You are good to go. 140, 150, 290, you're still good to go. And so many people worry about these things. If you can, that's if you realize that your GPA is very low and you need that buffer just to put you in pole position to
Okay.
compete. But regardless, you can still ask the program managers because, like I said, your statement of purpose would always be
Yeah.
the should I say that thing that would
That's
rescue you
what's going. Yes.
because most programs in the US also consider the talent, your talent. They consider your desire, your ambition,
Mm.
unlike the traditional UK schools that usually consider grades. And that is why you see all these people, these motivational speakers, they come up and they're like, I was having this grade, I was a bad student. They look at all these. And so even if you're having 2.2, but you clearly have a goal, you clearly know what you want to do, you clearly have an interest in something, go
Then
ahead and put a
US.
very good SOP. Put a very good SOP, a very strong one, and you'll be very competitive.
Wow. Okay. Someone is asking, do you need transcripts when applying for masters in the US?
Yes, you need transcripts. But another thing that people also usually don't pay attention, you don't need to graduate before applying to a school in the US. So you can be so let's say I'm in third year now, right? And I'll be graduating next year, May. All right. So that means that in fall this year, I'll be going to my fourth year. So I can apply for this application cycle that will be opening somewhere in fall so that I get my offer next year, January, February. And by May, I would have graduated. So by fall 2022, I would have graduated and I can go to school. So you don't need to graduate. You can apply in your third year, the year before you graduate. And what they will do is they will give you admissions, but it will be called a conditional offer on condition that you submit your full transcript. So you'll be given an offer, but it would be a conditional offer. Unlike when you have graduated and you're submitting your full transcript, you get an unconditional offer. So you can always use that approach. And you don't also need to have an official transcript at the time of applying. Same thing. If your transcript is not the official type, maybe if it's a student copy or any other copy, you can go ahead and submit it. You will still be given a conditional offer pending your official transcript. And
Okay.
so that shouldn't limit anyone who wants to apply.
Let me digress a bit again. Racism is quite a big deal, isn't it? So what's racism like in the US? That's another question I usually get some of the times.
All right, to be very frank with you again, I've been here for 5 years and I've not experienced it even for once. You
Okay.
see, these things for me, I feel they're usually blown out of proportion, to be
Thank
very
you.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
You bad news sells, and so that is why the least news that is bad, you see it trending.
Mm.
There are so many people. There's this documentary, this guy I watched recently. A white woman um housed him because I mean he came to her house to work very early in the morning, around 5 a.m. The woman housed him, gave him food, and through that whole good gesture, the guy got a car, right? This will not be published, but let's a white woman insult a black guy, it will be out there. And for me, I don't find it to be a big deal to be honest, even though I've not experienced it. To me, racism is just like, let's say, let me, yeah, because most of your audience are from Nigeria, let me say, it's just like saying I'm Igbo, and so I do not want my daughter to marry a Yoruba or an Awusa.
Mm.
It's the same thing, but people usually don't pay attention to it. And so the same tendency for someone to say you not marry from this tribe, or the same tendency for someone to look down on another tribe, or the same tendency for another African to think his country is bigger than another African brother, and so would disrespect that brother. For me, these things are in the same basket. And so usually when they talk about racism, I see it as blown out of proportion. Yes, some people actually experience it, no disrespect to those people. But then I think it's just like what happens back home, just that they have different names for it, tribalism, blah, blah, blah. But then they are all in the same
Okay.
basket.
So, guys, like I always say, I say really that migration, if you want to move from where you are, you just have to take the leap. And you don't have to necessarily, move and say, okay, I'm going. Well, sometimes it could work. You say you're going to the US and that's where you really want to go. Other times you might just say, okay, take a detour, move to Norway first, and from Norway you go to Canada or you go to US. The bottom line is that you move. And basically, there's nothing stopping you. The information is out there, and that's what we're providing. My YouTube channel is very active. It's Wakawaka Doctor, and I have a whole load of information about countries you can travel to. Now, my guest here is Cyril, lives in the United States, has been in the United States for 5 years, and has been dishing out information about how to migrate. If you have questions for Cyril, he has a YouTube channel, he's on Instagram, he's on Twitter. So, Cyril, how can they find you?
Okay, so I'm not active on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay.
Uh, I'm not active there, even though I've had these accounts for so long. But I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm active on Facebook, and I'm active on YouTube. And so for my YouTube channel, it is Cyril, and then my last name, that is Nyankerh,
Can
Cyril
you spell that
Nyanke,
again?
Cyril, Cyril. Then my last name, there's a space between Nyankerh. And so on my channel, I bring people on board to talk about educational opportunities in the US, how they manage to do it. They talk about their schools. They talk about different schools they know of that accept students from Africa. They talk about schools that would waive GRE and TOEFL for you. And so I have a ton of these videos on YouTube. So if someone should visit my channel, they should also find the information they would need with regards
Okay.
to.
Now, for this purpose alone, I know that people will need information. Can we ask that you please pay some time to your DM on Instagram and Twitter, where
Sure.
they'll send questions. So guys, that's his name. Cyril Nyanka is on Twitter, is on Instagram, is on YouTube. Send your questions across to him and he will answer. Okay. I don't want to take much of your time because we've spent almost an hour now talking about this. But any words for people listening, basically about how to migrate to the United States?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, please do not let anything stop you. For me, that is why it's called an opportunity. Give it a shot. Go for it. If you're good for that position, you are going to get it. Do not look at the things you see on the internet, on the surface of the websites you are on. Write to whoever you're supposed to write to. If it's the program manager, if it's the recruiter, write to them and ask all your questions. Do not be overwhelmed. Go for it. If it's schooling, look for the schools, get your documents in place, go get it. If it's research, that is if you want to go into academia, there are research positions, research assistant positions. For example, let's say if you're a chemistry student, physics, whatever course you are offering, you can write to some of these professors here that, oh, I want to come pursue this. I've graduated from with this degree, and this is what I want to do next. If they have an opening in their lab, they will take you on because they always need these people. And to just give it a shot, that is why it's an opportunity. It doesn't cost to write an email to a professor. It doesn't cost to write an email to a program manager. And so just go get it. Do not let anything limit you. Do not look at funding as an obstacle. There are so many ways to get funded. The information is out there. Just spend a little bit of time on the internet. Do a little bit of your own homework. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you do not want to commit time to this, then how would you commit time to your studies, right? How would you commit time to your master's or your PhD? So just a little time on the internet and you'll find all the information you need, especially with regards to your grad school applications.
Okay, all right, guys. One last question, Cyril. Do you need a block account if you want to apply to schools in the US?
No.
No, you don't need a block account. So that goes. Guys, you can find him, Cyril Nyanka. It's CYRILNYANKEHR. Please bombard him with your questions on Twitter, on Instagram. Send it to him. And I think on Twitter, his handle is Cyril250.
Amankwa.
Oh, it's still the same?
Yeah, no. So for this one, Cyril Nyanka, they'll find me on LinkedIn and YouTube.
Okay.
And so on
Instagram.
Twitter, that is why you mentioned. Instagram is Cyril _ AMANKWAH.
Cyril
_ AMANKWAH. But then Cyril Nyanka, you would find me on LinkedIn and on YouTube.
Okay. So guys, that's his Instagram, Cyril _Amankwa. You can find him there. Just send him all your messages, bombard him with messages, and follow him. He is quite knowledgeable about how to move to the United States. Guys, if you want other choices, you can find me on my own YouTube channel. I'll be putting this on my IG feed so that I can go back and watch anytime you want. I'll also put it on my YouTube channel just in case you want to see it. Thank you very much, Cyril. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure that this will not be the last time we will talk about this again. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for having me on your program.
Cheers, man. Thanks.
All right. Okay.